Welcome and good afternoon to our guests and all our students who are present with us today for the last session of our Legal Aid Fair of Wednesday, January 11. This evening, we have with us the esteemed Mr. Jeremy Taylor of King's Counsel, who will be presenting on bad sex, looking at the sexual offenses under the Sexual Offenses Act. To introduce our guest speaker is Ms. Janelle Green, a second-year law student. I now pass over to Ms. Green.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. I have the honor of introducing an esteemed member of our profession. He was called to the bar in November 1999. So undoubtedly, he comes to us today with a wealth of experience. After being called, he commenced his legal career as a clerk of court for the parish of St. Catherine. He remained in this role until 2004 when he commenced employment at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. He has since then been elevated to the inner bar on March 5th, 2020. He currently serves as a Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and his years of commendable work serving with dedication and honor have since been nationally recognized, having been awarded a Badge of Honor for meritorious service to the public bar on October 16th, 2022. It is my pleasure to welcome as our next presenter, Mr. Jeremy Christopher Taylor, King's Counsel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just take a check. Are you all able to hear me?
Hearing.
Able to hear me? Yes. All right. I wish to express my thanks to the Legal Aid, the Norman Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic for the invitation to address you on this topic. I have known Mrs. Wisdom Barnett all her life. So when the invitation came, it was very hard to say no. It's one of these situations where your knowledge and acquaintanceship of the person makes it hard to refuse any request. So though I'm on my little vacation leave, I find myself coming in to do work only because she asked. So I am very sorry. I just realized that I was muted. So let me start again. So the first disclaimer I'm going to give is that some of the images, text, or even opinions expressed here, well, let me start with images and text first, are used only for an illustrative purpose. They do not reflect my biases or my opinions. And more importantly, they do not reflect the opinions of Ms. Paula Llewellyn, the Director of Public Prosecutions, or the collective opinions of the Office of the DPP. Anything I say or any opinion that I express here is entirely mine alone. I'll beat my chest and say, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. So that is the first, that is the disclaimer I am going to give. The second one is that if you are going to be offended from now, giving you an option, you can leave, click off, leave meeting, whatever you do. If you stay here, you have waived your right to be offended with me. You can only curse me after the lecture is finished, and we log off and you meet up people to have your drinks and so on to say, well, Lord, this man come and chat a bag of nonsense or so on. So I understand that my audience is made up of law students and members of the public, especially second-year law students who, by the end of summer, you will be going to engage in practice. People's lives are going to be in your hand. People's liberty is going to be in your hand, whether you're on the side of the angels as a prosecutor or you're a Sith Lord on the defense side, if I use Star Wars imagery. But anyway, people's lives and liberty are going to be in your hands. So this might serve as a refresher. But since I understand that ordinary members of the public may be logging on and may be joining this, I ask you to understand with me if I pitch it for their understanding and not necessarily for legal professionals or law students. So I'm not being condescending at all. I want to start off with some statistics, because every day we hear ministers of government and so on talking about crime. And every day crime is filtered through the lens of murder. It's not murder, crime not taking place. So murder is the sexy crime at the moment. The subject of ZOSOs, the subject of, states of emergencies, all of that. What we don't talk about is that we have a very serious problem with relation to sexual offending. Next to murder, sexual offenses are the next biggest category of offenses tried before the courts in Jamaica. And I have put these statistics on here. What do these statistics show? So this is the statistics for the Hillary term for 2020. And I've chosen that term because it was the last normal term before COVID. So this is the last time we had normal kind of numbers before the court. It's still a whole heap, but COVID caused the court lists to expand. So the Hillary term is a New Year term for the members of the public who are sitting here, and perhaps even for the law students. The Supreme Court sits 3 times a year. It sits in the Hillary term or the New Year term. It starts in January. And you know that the Hillary term for 2023 started on Monday. It has the Easter term, or what is called the Trinity term, that starts in April and goes to the last Friday, usually in July. So you have Hillary, then Trinity, and then the last term is Michaelmas, or as many Jamaicans like to pronounce it, Michaelmas. And that is from September to December, or what we refer to as the Christmas term. So anyway, I have extracted the Hillary term for 2020 because it was pre-COVID. So the first set of statistics looks at what percentage of the caseloads before the circuit courts in our parishes do sexual offenses form. And I've arranged them by the parishes with the greatest number of sexual offenses per capita in a circuit to the lowest. So you will note, especially if you look at 1, 2, and 3, Portland, St. Thomas, and St. Mary, that the whole eastern end of the island is in problems. The whole eastern end of the island is in problems. Portland, St. Mary, and St. Thomas, the majority of cases being prosecuted out there are sexual offense cases. So you will see that for the Hillary term in 2020, Portland had about 68% of the cases before the court as being sexual offenses. St. Thomas was 67, and St. Mary at 66, and then it was followed by St. Catherine at 58. I have some theories. I think that sometimes sexual offending is related to the pattern of development in the parish. And the whole eastern end of the island is very rural, not very urbanized. Consequently, it also means that murders are not very common in these parishes. If Portland gets a murder, it makes national news. St. Catherine is an interesting parish. St. Catherine is a mixture of very urban and very rural. You get Spanish Town and Portmore. You probably get some other places like Linstead, which are coming to come. And then you get deep rural places going up the hills. You go past Kitson Town, going up Guanabo Vale and Watermount and all of these places, Bella's Gate, and so on. And so St. Catherine has a high rate of sexual offending, just as though it has a high rate of violent crime. And then when you come down, when you come to Kingston and St. Andrew, as a percentage of cases, Kingston and St. Andrew, for the Hillary term, only had 28% before the court. And why is that? Because we love to kill people instead of having sex with them in the corporate area. Killing is sexy in town. So you will find that when you look at that statistics, only 28% of the court list were sexual offense cases versus 52% in the other column for murder. So I have compared sexual offenses with murder because murder is the chief crime in the country. I want to show where sexual offenses line up with it. And in fact, if you look at the Hillary term, at the grand total, we actually had more sex cases than murder cases before the court. We had 1,010 sex cases out of a grand total of 2,499 cases, of which 40% were sex cases versus 39%, which were murder. And that should tell you something. That should tell you something about the kinds of cases that prosecutors are dealing with in the court. So we perhaps need a state of emergency or some serious crime plan for sexual offending. So that is it in relation to percentage. If I go, however, quantitatively in terms of cases before the court, then Kingston and St. Andrew is in an exalted position because the number of cases they had was 313, and at the lowest you had Trelawney, which had 17. So whichever statistic floats your boat, percentage or quantity, either way, sexual offending is very high. And either way, prosecutors like me spend a lot of time dealing with sexual offenses. Let us look at the police statistics. And these were accessed from the Jamaica Constabulary Force website on January 3rd, 2023. And the police statistics will be wider than the DPP statistics because the DPP statistics dealing only with the cases before the court. And we're not even talking about cases that come before the court in real time because they have to be investigated. There's always a lag between commission of the offense, investigation of it, charge, and put before the court. So the cases don't come to us in real time, but the police statistics are more real time. because the police go off reports. So you see that January of 2021, there were 1,400 murders, 1,474 versus 1,498. I sometimes joke that in the Jamaican economy, murder is the only growth industry that we see happening. So murder is at the top. In the empire of iniquity, murder have the crown. But let us look at rape. And rape is 480 in 2021 versus 419 in 2022. And you may look at those numbers and say, well, that looks small. But remember, the police have only disaggregated for rape. They have not added any other sexual offenses. Sex under 16 is not there, indecent assault is not there, grievous sexual assault is not there, child pornography is not there. None of these are here. It's only rape alone. My humble opinion, if the police were to lump all the sexual offenses together, then you would get a figure either equal to the murders or coming close to the number of murders in Jamaica. So this is the context in which sexual offending takes place. And this is really what I want to say for the ordinary Jamaican man and woman who is on here. Look at it. Sexual offending is a major criminal issue in Jamaica, which really has not been given, in my humble view, that amount of policy attention in the way that murder has. And in my line of work on the prosecution side of things, we see as many damaged individuals who have survived or who have to live with the consequences of a sexual offense being perpetrated on them. And it is not a pretty sight. Many of these persons are troubled. And in fact, a good portion of the population are the walking wounded in relation to that. If you look at divisions, police divisions, in terms of where the highest number of rapes they are getting their reports from. So I have January to December 2021 versus January to December 2022, side by side with each other. So it looks St. Catherine North. So you know that as a police division, St. Catherine is divided into two. St. Catherine North, in which the headquarters is in Spanish Town, and St. Catherine South, where the police headquarters is in Portmore, or 100 Man, as we like to call them. So you will see 2021, St. Catherine North recorded 54 rapes. And in 2022, there was a decline to 48. And then in 2021, number 2 was St. Andrews South. That is the area covered by Hunts Bay Police Station. It was 40. But then, please note that by 2022, Hunts Bay had been knocked out of number 2 to be replaced by Westmoreland, 41. So these are the police divisions in which the police have recorded. And these are, remember, I'm telling you, these are just rapes alone. The police have not put out the statistics for the other offenses that are being committed. So let's move on. Why have I decided to go with the definition of a child? Because as a prosecutor, a good portion of my victims of sexual offenses are children. And I see Miss Cruikshank inside here, you know, watching me here and unnerving me. But she knows we've done many circuits together in the parish of St. Mary, and she has had to see, she has not only represented many child offenders for these offenses, but she has also seen, and perhaps even at times had to represent many child victims of sexual offenses. So what is the age of childhood in Jamaica? Under the law, the Child Care and Protection Act, Section 2, a child is a person. See here, I'm being politically correct, gender neutral. A child is a person between the ages of 0 to 17. So 0 to 17 are the ages of child, is the age of childhood in Jamaica. Once you turn 18, you're a big man and big woman. The law says you're an adult at that stage. But 0 to 17, the age of childhood, and 0 to 17 is where we see a lot of our victims. In fact, much younger than 17. We still get quite a number of our cases involve children whose ages are in single digits, and quite a number of them are children, mostly girls, who are at the age of puberty. 11, 12, 13. I have decided to do that, start out with a child. So especially members of the public who are watching, let me urge you, guard your children, watch your children, and supervise your children, because they are being targeted by predators out there. And by children, I mean boys and girls. It is true that the face of sexual offending in Jamaica as a victim is usually female, but that is not entirely the case. Quite a number of boys are sexually molested. So children, you can't say it's mostly girls and little bit of boys. All sexes of children need to be protected in Jamaica. So let me start with that. So I started off with the definition of a child, and I've told you why, because the context is a lot of our cases involve children as victims. The second thing that I want to define for you, and it is important because when we look at the sexual offenses, many of them may not exactly be sexual intercourse. We know they are sexual in nature, but they are not sexual intercourse. So what does Jamaican law say sexual intercourse is? Jamaican law says sexual intercourse is the penis being inserted into the vagina. So according to Jamaican law, sexual intercourse can only take place between a man and a woman. It can't take place between any other sex. So whether you are they or them, whether you are intersex, hermaphrodite, trans, or so on, man or. And I say that not to be insulting, because Jamaican law only recognizes male and female. It doesn't recognize any other category, any other gender category. So that is it. And here is a biological illustration of what that looks like. So it means then that only certain types of offenses can be committed between men and women. So it means only rape can only be committed in a heterosexual context. Incest can only be committed in a heterosexual context. Sex with a person under 16 can only be committed within a heterosexual context, because all of these offenses require that a penis must enter a vagina. Next important concept in sex, and this is, I know, where a lot of us get into problem, whether you're a lawyer, law student, or ordinary person on the street, is the issue of consent. Consent means that the person must agree to have sexual intercourse with us. So it's not by something that you can say by inference. So you're at a bar and you see the woman wink, wink at you and so on. You can't say that means that has given you consent to go and have sexual intercourse with her. My rule of thumb is, and I don't think it has proven me wrong yet, you need to hear perhaps you need to go further. Yes, I will have sexual intercourse with you. Don't go into anything that's because I take you out and you eat my food and I carry to a nice restaurant, probably I carry to a restaurant at Jamaica, Pegasus, where the prices are inflated, but the food isn't all that hot, but you're really paying for the ambience. And I carry you there and you order expensive wine and you order expensive lobster, use up my little paycheck and so on. And then based on that, I think that because I have invested this money into your meal, it means that, of course, you have consented to go home with me tonight and have sex with me. No, it don't work that way. Unless you hear her say so, consent must be given. There are sometimes when consent can perhaps be given by action. So, gentlemen, you are there and things get hot and heavy, and I should take off her clothes and lie down on the bed and say, take me now. Well, you can see consent has been given there, you know, so, but consent must be expressed. And let me advise, especially again, for the members of the public, if you don't have consent, you need to stop. I'm going to go even further, and some people may be appalled by this. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. So even if you're hot and heavy and you're in the middle of things, you know, you're getting on and say yes, and just say, look, you're tired, you need to stop now. Well, I'm going to say no, well, I can't control myself or so on. The law says that you're a reasonable, rational being. You need to withdraw, just like what the consent was withdrawn, and stop. So consent can be withdrawn at any moment. So always ensure that consent is freely given. And I'm going to say this now and come back to it in greater detail. If the person is below a certain age, the law presumes, well, not the law presumes, the law says they cannot lawfully give consent. So persons who love schoolgirls, unless you see their birth certificate, which says that they are 16 and over, once they're under 16, leave them alone. In fact, let me say it here. Most sexual offenses committed in Jamaica do not involve a stranger. They involve a person that is known. Whether it's an authority figure, like a teacher, a pastor, or a coach. Whether it's a family member, like a grandfather, uncle, sometimes even a father. Whether it's a neighbor down the road, Mass Will or Mr. John or so on. They tend to be persons that are known. And sometimes, and many of you in the communities who live in communities, you've seen these girls from their little children. And again, my rule of thumb is, if they're still wearing school uniform, leave them alone. Leave them alone. But there is an age of consent, and that is 16. So don't, as I've had in a case that I had before the Home Circuit Court, have sex with her the day before her 16th birthday. He had waited one more day, he would have been legal. But he caught her on age 15, 364 days with a couple hours left to go. Couldn't wait. And he found himself before the court for, I think it was then, carnal abuse, now sex under 16. So age 16 is the age of consent. Please do not be taken to say that I'm advocating that people must go and have sex with 16-year-old girls. I am not. My personal preference would be that you wait until they reach adulthood and that they know what they're doing and that they can give informed consent to having sexual intercourse. Law says consent does not exist in the following circumstances. If it is extorted by physical assault, that is, if you beat the person, or you threaten to beat the person, or if you're a licensed firearm holder, you just take out the gun and you put it on the desk here with the implied message, well, if I don't get what I want, you're not shooting. Or you threaten to do something. Sometimes it's not even as baseless as killing. Sometimes say, well, you know, if you don't do this thing with me, I will say to you that your mother lose the work. So where you have circumstances like that, the law says consent does not exist because it has not been freely given. Where it's obtained by false and fraudulent representation. Now, we saw a lot of cases like these, especially when you're dealing with teachers or pastors or so on. You know, you have the pastor who says, I must bring your sexual desires to the fore so I may eliminate it through prayer. You see a lot of people also use obia with it. I had a case in which the obia man said, he had to have sex with the victim because she was carrying dopey eggs, and the only way the dopey eggs could be expelled from her body was if he, the Obia man, had sex with her. For those of you law students who have done criminal law, you are familiar with the case of the music teachers who said they had to widen her pipes so that it would make a much better sound when she's singing. False and fraudulent representation, consent is not freely given. Again, you can find yourself being charged and being brought before the court. As I said before, person under 16, said before also personal authority, the abuse of authority, whether you're a manager, whether you're a coach, whether you're a school teacher, whether you get it by unlawfully detaining the complainant, meaning person is at your place, perhaps even came over to study, and you lock her in the room, and say she's not getting out until you have sex with me. And intimidation of any kind. Once any of these circumstances exist, consent has not been freely given, and you find yourself then liable to be charged with a sexual offense. Let me move on. Having said that now, having said that the age of consent is 16, having said that the age of childhood is 0 to 17, at what age in Jamaica can you be charged with a criminal offense? As I say, I see Ms. Cruikshank here, and she has represented many child offenders in the circuits that we have appeared. The age of criminal responsibility in Jamaica is 12. Repeat that again. The age of criminal responsibility is 12. Age 12 is where you can be charged with a crime same way like an adult person. So I don't know if you remember that some years ago, an 11-year-old boy stabbed and killed a 15-year-old boy in Trelawney. And I don't remember if you recall the outcry that ensued because the police could not charge him with murder, that to charge him or put him before the court as a child in need of care and protection. And that is because he was 11, below the age of 12. So, and the law is clear, Section 63, it shall be conclusively presumed that no child under the age of 12 years can be guilty of an offense. I'm going to assume this is a rebuttable presumption, but this is a nice Latin phrase for those who want to say that you watch this and you can quote like legal Latin. This means that the child is what is called dole incapax. L-I, one word, incapax, I-N-C-A-P-A-X, dole incapax. So the child cannot commit an offense. And the sexual offense law used to have that presumption of dole incapax. It used to say that a male beneath the age of 14 could not commit a sexual offense, which I know from when I was going to high school is foolishness. I know this because as a person who attended a boys' school, my peers would sit around and chat and speak about batteries that they performed. And these were all boys, the ages of 12, 13 years old. So the law has removed that ridiculous presumption that a male under the age of 14 cannot commit a sexual offense. But age of criminal responsibility, repeat, is at age 12. So let us get now into our sexual offending. I'm going to start at the very top of the list with rape. And what is rape? And I've used a definition here that comes out of the Sexual Offences Act, Section 3. Rape is committed where a man has sexual intercourse with a woman without her consent. So remember what I was saying, consent needs to be expressed. So first thing, consent must be given. And it goes on. It says, knowing that the woman does not consent to sexual intercourse. It's a two-pronged thing. Without her consent, and you already have the knowledge that she does not consent. Or you recklessly don't care whether the woman consents or not. So the third part, the recklessly, gives rise to the reasonable belief defense. You say you had a reasonable belief that the woman was consenting. And this goes back, and this is perhaps for the benefit of the law students online, to DPP and Morgan. The case that, is really a charter for rapists. But anyway, a charter of rights for rapists, a case that I've never liked. But DPP and Morgan is really locus classicus about the reasonable belief. And DPP and Morgan was where husband talking to his friend in a pub and said, why don't you come and have sex with my wife? And says, yes, man, she's up to this kind of thing. She's adventurous and freaky that way. And then he gets a caveat and said, look here. She might appear not to want it, She might even fight you and bite you and scratch to stop. But that is just her thing. That is how she likes to do it. And the man comes and he has sex with the man's wife. And sure enough, the wife can't understand why this strange man is forcing himself on her, and she fights and so on. And he thinks that is part of the whole sexual attraction that, increases the attractiveness of what has been happening. So it is where the House of Lords here formulated the principle, recklessly not caring whether the woman consents or not, but they were to add that you must have a reasonable belief that she was consenting. Again, I do not understand how the conviction was quashed, but that is the law at present. So who can commit rape? I come back again to the definition of sexual intercourse. Remember, I say sexual intercourse in Jamaica can only be between a man and a woman. So in Jamaica, only a man can commit rape. Sorry, only a male can commit rape. Females cannot commit rape in Jamaica. And that male can be at age 12 to 100. I'd be really surprised at a 100-year-old, but let me not say it is impossible. So offender can only be a male in Jamaica. In other countries, the law is gender neutral. Women, females can commit rape, but in Jamaica, only a male can commit rape. Jamaica, only a female can be a victim of rape. And again, only a female of any age, from 0 to 100, can be a victim of rape. And then the law has gone further with this marital rape. So you know that up to when did the Sexual Offences Act come into effect? It was passed in 2009. I think it came into effect in 2011. So up to 2010, a husband couldn't rape his wife. In fact, once he got married, the law was, well, the wife, consent is given. So whether you wanted to have sex or not, your husband could take it. If he took it by force or took it by intimidation, it was not rape at all. And there was this nice case by the Court of Appeal of England and Wales, R&R, RVR, which a Court of Appeal held, this thing about the wife irrevocably having given her consent is a common law fiction. It really do exist. A husband can actually rape his wife. And that principle was encoded into our Sexual Offences Act. But here is the problem, and this is why I don't like marital rape. And let me give a scenario. Say, I, Jeremy Taylor, I am married. But like many Jamaican men, I have a deputy. Though I am married, I have a deputy. I prefer the Trinidadian term to matey. It does sound more respectable. I have a deputy. So I go to my deputy first and say, come man, a long time we don't do the thing. Let us get on with it. And just said, no, I'm not having sex with you. Because for the last 4 years, you're promising to divorce your wife. And you have not done so. Well, look your shop lock tonight. And on that day, the boss, they threw me out and dogged it back after me and so on. So I hold her down and I take it. Then after that, I leave and I come home to my wife. But because I had to fight the deputy friends, I come ask my wife now thinking she'd be more willing and because she's my wife. And the wife said, no, I'm not doing it if I can know where you're coming from. You're coming from that woman. Well, not a thing. Shop lock tonight. And I get vexed again because shop lock for me twice in one day. I go and I take it by force. Anyway, these women don't put up with me abusing their rights and their freedoms, and both of them head down to the police station. As by chance, they meet up at the same police station. Here is what happens now. With the deputy, the police can say, oh dear, come, let us carry you to the hospital now and you can be examined. And let us collect a statement from you now and so on. And you know what? Because he's not here. Let us all take out a warrant on information on rape now and let us go execute the warrant and see if we can arrest the man where him live and tell us, yes, he's at his wife's home. The wife now comes to the police to make the same report, my husband rapes me. Police have to produce a checklist. All right. Were you separated at the time when he raped you? Because these are the categories here. Were you separated and living separately and apart, even in the same house? Did you have separate lives? No, weren't separated. All right, was there a separation agreement in writing? No. I know I've never done family law beyond when I did it at law school or so on. But I must imagine that in the Jamaican jurisdiction, written separation agreements are a rarity. Not saying it don't happen, I'm just saying it's a rarity. So you have a written separation agreement, and the woman says, what? Written separation agreement? No, there's no such thing. All right. Next on the list. Have you instituted proceedings for a divorce? Or you plan to get divorced, you file a thing? No, we don't reach there yet. All right. Is there an injunction granted by the court that you're not supposed to live together and not supposed to come in there and molest you? No. All right, son. This one is very delicate and I apologize for asking it. You know if he was suffering from a sexually transmitted disease? No, as in bad enough, but in clean. Wife, you know you don't fall into any of these 5 categories. You know, so I can't charge your husband for rape. I can see if I can charge him for assault. If they beat you up, I can probably charge him for assault or be harm. I have with marital rape. If you are saying that marriage is the pinnacle of all human relationships, why is the wife treated as a second-class citizen to the deputy? So the deputy can get justice or at least put proceedings in train to get justice. Because Jamaican juries don't like to convict for rape or sex. You may not get the legal justice. But wife now, the wife can't even get the rape charge made out. Oh, this is my problem with marital rape. This is why I think it should be abolished. And it is why I think, thank you very much. And it is why I think there should really only be one rape offense. And rape is committed whether you're married or not. Again, give my disclaimer. That is a personal opinion of Jeremy C. Taylor. It is not the personal opinion of Ms. Paula Llewellyn. It is not the opinion, the collective opinion of the office of the DPP. So let me move on. And if you are convicted for rape, well, life imprisonment with a mandatory minimum period of 15 years. So if a jury finds you guilty of rape, or you decide you're going judge alone, when a judge finds you guilty of rape, you need to know that the shortest sentence you are going to get is 15 years. The maximum is life, but the shortest is 15 years. A judge cannot sentence you below 15 years. So, gentlemen, let's ensure that you get that express consent before you do anything. So let's move on. Let us move on to an offense which is very prolific. And if you look on many of the court lists across the circuit, it perhaps is a dominant sexual offense in many of the parishes in Jamaica, especially outside of Kingston and St. Andrew, and that is sexual intercourse with a person under 16. Again, this is a gender-neutral offense, but let me come to that. So as I was saying, there is an age of consent in Jamaica, and that age of consent is 16 years. And remember, I told you about the case, whereas all the day before her 16th birthday, he went and had sex with us. Even up to that point, the offense is committed. So, what are the elements of that offense? So, you will see it can be an adult male or an adult female. And yes, I've deliberately chosen that adult male since he's now serving a sentence for what he has done, and his predatory inclinations were well known. The other one I know is because she loved to date young men, but as far as I know, all her dates have been adult males. But anyway, let me start first with an adult in authority, because when you're looking at sex under 16, the person who has sex with the girl or boy under 16, the first things you have to determine, well, is he an adult? Well, it's an adult in authority, or is the person nearing age to the complainant? And there are special systems set up for when they are nearing age. Let me start with the adults in authority. And I'll tell you why. When I started at the DPP way back in 2004, a bunch of cases before the Home Circuit Court, which originated around the time of boys and girls champs. And all of these cases involved coaches. All of these cases. So, you know, the adults coming from, the teams coming from country, them spend time at this guest house here, that guest house here, or this hotel there, the school can spring for it. And the coaches are there in the same facilities with them. And what we found were that these coaches were either taking the girls into their room and having sexual intercourse with them, because as you know, the parent is not at the hotel with the student athlete. So the adult in authority is a person who is in a position of trust in relation to a child. So as a coach, teacher, pastor, but it can even be more. If you are one of these persons who contract a particular taxi driver or busman to take your child back and forth from school, that's a person in authority in relation to the child. So that is one. And plenty of cases like these. I mean, we all know about the pastor cases that make the news. For example, there was one which my colleague prosecuted in the Home Circuit Court. And, you know, especially, and pastors have that in them because people just trust them. You believe in God, is God's shepherd on earth. This is the man who's the guardian of your soul and your conscience. It's the man who you go to for prayers and healing and so on. And we had one in which a pastor took the little boy and the little girl out for ice cream. I don't ever think anything of it. It's pastor and so on. And he took them and carried them to his house. He then locked the little boy out of the room, took his sister in there, proceeded to have sex with her. Now, it was one of these houses where the door does not go all the way up to the jamb. There was a space. And the little boy, and thank God for it, fast, and thank God the fastest didn't kill Miss Matipus in this case, climbed up to see what pastor was doing with his sister. He looked in the space and saw pastor having sex with his sister, and then finished, carry them for ice cream, carry them back home to mother. No. So rather than just drop off the children and leave, decides to engage mother in a conversation there. The little boy is tugging on mommy's skirt. Mommy, 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 I have something to tell you. And you know, the way we like to dismiss children when they say they have something to tell you. And the mother said, shut up, man, shut up. You know, it's big people talking. Still insists, mommy, 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 I'm past. I'll get bold. I said, you know, start talking to your mother. And the boy couldn't take it up. Mommy, Pastor so-and-so, sex off, name of his sister. Then, of course, silence. And then, whatever. Anyway, pastor is arrested. Pastor says, lie. It's a wicked and mischievous invention by this little boy. And the girl went and gave evidence. And she said a line here, which I've never forgotten when my colleague told me. She said, this pastor, you know, him baptized me and him sexed me off. And when she said that, the jury just went, a good guilty verdict. The jury was so appalled, they couldn't help. They couldn't help but react when they heard that evidence, and he was sentenced. And when we come to the convict, the punishment, you would see that he got a sentence which would not have been open had it just been any other person, because he was an adult in authority. The second category of adults in authority is the person whom the child is in a relationship of dependency with. So, can be a guardian, any stepfathers in the audience here, this is you. And while I'm not writing off stepfathers in Jamaica, it is common knowledge that many persons who have the status of stepfathers have sex with these young girls, or as we are seeing also, sexual connection, not intercourse, with the boys. Or foster parents, guardian, and so on. So these are all adults in authority who can be charged. In Jamaica, can be a child, male or female, as long as they're below the age of 16. I included a boy's picture here because now, since 2011, women or females can be charged with having sex with boys under the age of 16. Culturally, it is rare. We do have some cases in the courts in Jamaica, but we don't see a whole lot of them. But it is not unknown for the police to charge, and in all the cases we've had adult women who have had sex with boys under the age of 16. So again, just like rape, this is an offense that can only take place within a heterosexual context. So it can only be committed by a woman, by a female on a male, or a male on a female. It does not apply when the two persons are of the same sex. So what is the punishment? It is life imprisonment. So a person, especially an adult, who has sex with a child under the age of 16 needs to know that the maximum period of imprisonment is life imprisonment. And the second thing to know is that if you are an adult in authority to that child and you have been convicted for having sexual intercourse with a person under the age of 16, it is not only life imprisonment, but there's a mandatory minimum of 15 years. Adult in authority, convicted for having sex with a child under 16, the shortest sentence the judge can give you is 15 years. That is it. Only best bet to be sentenced below the 15 years is if you plead guilty. Then the judge can sentence below the mandatory minimum. But if you decide to go and fight it and you lose the case, well, your next bet will have to be the Court of Appeal. Then come to incest, cousin and cousin boiling good soup. And I start off with this picture because, the Bible depicts quite a number of incestuous relationships. And I depicted here Lot and his daughters, and I put the reference there for you to find it. Genesis 19, 29 to 38. Now, you will all recall that when the Lord rained fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his daughters thought that the world had come to an end, that God had destroyed the world, and they were the only 3 people left in the world. And Lot's daughter says, well, God kill off every man. In here is only a father left. How are we to have children? To be fair to Lot did not openly consent to it. They got the father drunk. And they both had sex with their father, and children were born. The Bible does not state their reaction when they found out that the world had not been destroyed. But that is it. So there are these forbidden relationships that you cannot have. So how is the offense of incest committed? Again, incest is committed only in the context of sexual intercourse, that a penis must go in a vagina. So it's when a male or a female willingly has sexual intercourse with another who falls within, and I like the phrase here, forbidden boundaries of consanguinity, or there's a relationship of blood between you. But if you want to impress people, set the forbidden boundaries of consanguinity. But if you're going to especially write it, law students, make sure you spell it properly. So what are the forbidden bounds? So if you are a male, the law says you cannot have sex with your mother, your sister, your grandmother, your daughter, your aunt, your niece, or your granddaughter. Notice that cousin is left out of it. It probably suits a royal family. But those are the forbidden relationships. For female, can't have sexual intercourse with your father, your son, your grandfather, your brother, your uncle, or your grandson. Once you're having sexual intercourse within these boundaries of relationships, then you have committed the offense of incest. And I remember a case in a rural parish. I don't know if Miss Cruikshank was a lawyer in the matter. It was the same parish that I usually buck her up in. But it was a case, young boy, he may have been about 12 or 13. And he had sexual intercourse with his sister, who may have been, her age may have been either 10 or 9. But the sexual intercourse was so bad that the girl needed surgery. She suffered great damage to her genital area, and a surgeon had to repair it. And I remember the case in court. The boy pleaded guilty, but mother was so torn. Here it is. Her son has done this to his sister. Here it is. The sister is a victim of what the son had. And you could see she just didn't know what to do. In fact, she just stood up in the court and she wept and she wept and she wept and she wept and she wept. I think fortunately victim support persons were there for her because she's just as much a victim as the daughter. And I think because of the nature of the harm and so on, I think the judge gave the boy a correctional order, which means that he had a custodial sentence. So cases are not easy. Emotionally, they take a toll, not only on the victims and the family members who are before you, but I think even I, as a prosecutor, is used to having my lunch, looking at scene of crime pictures of murders and so on, was quite moved by the distress of this mother who had a son going off to a juvenile facility and a daughter who had been injured because of what the son did. Again, as I said, The offense can only be committed in a heterosexual context. So it has to be a female on a male or a male on a female. If there are both sexes, another offense have to be charged. So it also does not include, and I think this is where the law has a shortcoming. It does not include children by adoption, or it does not include foster children. I think the law is limited here. I think the law of incest, once there's this familial relationship, if you adopt the child, then the child is really and truly a part of your family. You mustn't have to go to DNA to go establish the connection. And this is where I think, for example, Jamaica perhaps can borrow from the sexual offenses law in Guyana. Because in Guyana, adopted children and foster children fall within the family context, and you can charge incest once that is done. But in Jamaica, there's a limitation. And if you get limitations outside of age, so the person is 16 and over, you get even more difficult to go and combat the molestation or the interference that is taking place. So are the penalties. 1, life imprisonment, and parent or guardian, revocation of your parental authority. Courts can take away your parental rights. Court can appoint a person to be a guardian during the period. So again, and incest is one of these crimes families don't like to acknowledge it. And I can understand why. It's pretty shameful, it's pretty dark, and so on. And it happens all over the place. People get pregnant out of incest and have children. I mean, I think it's one of these things, without saying I'm in favor of any law, but I really do believe that if Jamaica is going to look at the law in relation to abortion, it must be one of the things they must give serious consideration. There's something wrong. I'm beginning, and my position on this is evolving. By tomorrow, if you ask me, I'll probably tell you something different. But I mean, there's something wrong with a person being forced to carry a child to term that has come out of this kind of relationship. But again, I may add a disclaimer, this is a personal opinion of Jeremy C. Taylor and not the collective opinion of the Office of the DPP or Ms. Paula Llewellyn. And we come to the sexual offense, which everybody now has an opinion on in Jamaica, which is why I think I've come to the view that if Jamaica really wants to reform the law in relation to buggery, I think they need to have a referendum. I don't think Parliament should just have the 63 people in there voting on it. Just so I think you will need to consult the people of Jamaica, because every Jamaican person, male and female, have an opinion in where this offense is going. Ironically, although we tend to stereotype buggery as between two males, and the picture that I've selected here doesn't, do anything to dispel that notion, buggery is a gender-neutral offense. Look at the offenses against the Persons Act. If you look at it in common law, it is a gender-neutral offense. How is buggery committed? It's when a male inserts his penis into the anus of another person, either male or female. So let us get it straight. We know that there are people who like to go through the back door. The forbidden entrance goes south in that way. And we know that many of these persons who like it are men and women who are experimenting and giving full rein to their freaky side. And we know that in the context where that happens, it is usually consensual. So then, imagine the horror to these people when they discover you can't consent to buggery. So even if you're a husband and wife, and that is part of your relationship, you can't consent to it. Again, I don't know. And I don't want a body to come here to say that I'm defending changing in law, but if a man and a woman who are consenting to it, I don't know why the police must come and shine a light through your bedroom to see if you're having sex in the normal position. And again, it's perhaps something that will have to be looked at to have like we have with other sexual offenses. You have an age cutoff, 16, consent, and so on. Because when we speak about buggery, we always tend to think that it's between two men, but there are a whole heap of men and women out there. There are a whole heap of men out there bugging women. It's not, I say bugging, not necessarily mean that they're calling and pestering you. Happens. As you can see, I put here, unlawful if a husband buggers his wife, even with her consent. In fact, in Jamaica, both persons are guilty, technically. As a person court, a witness to get the matter before the court. So, boy, who first run to police? Ever first run to police? That is who they're going with. But that usually tends to be it. And the usual defense, especially from the part of the receiver, is that they acted under duress. They were forced into it. So the great majority of cases that we tend to see before the court usually involve young boys and adult males. Or they involve mentally, and to use the language of the Mental Health Act, mentally disordered persons. What we would say in old time days, the politically incorrect term, that to say them kind of retarded. They're usually the types of cases that we see. It's very rare that we see two adult males coming before the court. And the truth is, the number of cases of buggery are not legion in this. I mean, you get more rapes, you get more sex under 16, you get more incest than you get buggery, especially buggery between adult males. And that just tells you so that the police in Jamaica have other things to do than to kick down your bedroom door and look in and see what you're doing, especially if it's two adult males. You know, so the usual, if a child mentally disabled person, or you go to one of these lookout spots where you think the body not going to come up on you. So again, let me give an anecdote. When I was a clerk in St. Catherine, we actually had a case. It was before the toll road, and Dyke Road was far more bushy than it was. And this was a guy from Nannyville who met up with an American guy who was serving as a Roman Catholic priest in Maypen. And their point of rendezvous was the Dyke Road in St. Catherine. Unbeknownst to these people who did not live in the parish of St. Catherine, as I say, one from Maypen, one from Nannyville, is that the police patrol the Dyke Road. Why? Because this is where they find a lot of stolen cars. Sometimes they find dead bodies and so on and so on. Police come upon a car, which on a very hot night, the glasses were fogged and misty. According to the officer, as to how he described it, he shone his light inside there. And he said he had to drop the light address back. It sounds amusing now. But again, as I say, these are the three circumstances in which these cases usually come to court. Public place, child complainant, mentally disordered complainant. about buggery that I must tell you is that whereas in the Eastern Caribbean and other parts of the Caribbean, the offense is differentiated between buggery or bestiality, in Jamaica, buggery covers everything. So buggery also covers sexual intercourse with an animal. So again, I am told that a lot of these things happen. You know, persons found having sexual intercourse with animals. But strange enough, we never ever really see them before the court. And I just believe that the police shame for the people then when they catch them. The last time I saw such a case was when I was prosecuting, I think, in St. Anne. And the case came across this farmer who caught the man in his pig pen with the pig, you know. And despite the fact that, you know, they had DNA, and I mean, I was telling you, kudos to the police for investigating that one very well. The fellow was insisting he was not guilty. Unfortunately, I don't know how that case ever ended. But buggery also involves sex with animals. So when people sometimes talk about repealing the buggery law wholesale, you need to know, you need to differentiate exactly what it is you're repealing or what it is you are amending. Now, in some countries in the world, this is not an offense. For example, if you go to Germany, they actually have brothels. You can go, and if your preference is to a cow, a sheep, or a goat, you have a brothel that can service you there. So again, the picture I have put up here is a picture from Greek myth, Leda and the swan. So the swan here is Zeus, king of the gods. And if you know anything about your Greek mythology, Zeus had a wandering eye. He loved mortal females, and he came to Leda in the form of a swan. And he had sexual intercourse, partly with her also in the form of a swan. And she gave birth to two sons, Castor and Pollux. One took the nature of his father and was immortal and couldn't die. And the other one took the nature of his mother, was mortal and could die, which I think was Pollux. Anyway, Pollux died and Castor was heartbroken because his brother is dead. And his father, to deal with the sorrow of Castor, decided to turn them into stars. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you get the zodiac sign of Gemini. It's who Gemini. So if you think back about it, the origins of the constellation Gemini are rooted in the commission of a criminal offense with a woman who had sexual intercourse with an animal. I'm not going to stay on that too long, except to say that if you are convicted of it, the maximum period of imprisonment is 10 years. Let's move on. Your sexual assault. Now, grievous sexual assault, I'm going to say here now, carries the same penalty as rape. And what grievous sexual assault really is penalizing is sexual conduct where the vagina or the anus is penetrated by a body part other than the penis or with an object other than the penis. So you're dealing with fingers, you're dealing with tongues, you're dealing with dildo, bananas, cucumbers, whatever. Again, so you have these sexual offenses. So, for example, I think they perhaps came with this one to deal with the fact of how could a woman sexually assault a man, which we know is possible. So this is how I think the parliament tried to deal with it. So grievous sexual assault, again, as I say, it's an offense that is similar to rape. And the elements of it are similar to rape. So it must be without the consent of the victim. So again, if you are one of these freaky side persons, get the express consent before you begin introducing any object or body part other than a penis into the person's anus or vagina. It also says, like rape, you must know that the victim did not consent or you recklessly did not care whether the victim consented or not. So what is the usual form of this case that we see? The usual form of this case that we see is usually enforced oral sex on the person. Usually see it in the gun court, with guns, force women to have oral sex on them. Or we see it in rape cases. It forms a part of the narrative of the rape, where when the person is beginning, he inserts either his finger into the woman's vagina or inserts his tongue into the woman's vagina, again, without her consent. I mean, not say woman, the female's vagina. This is how we see grievous sexual assault being committed. And it is quite possible to be charged for both rape and grievous sexual assault, where if you are convicted, you're looking at double life sentences, perhaps serve concurrently. And again, we have seen a case like that. Myself and, well, not going to identify the parish, prosecuted a case in a rural parish, not the one that Ms. Cruikshank usually goes to, it's a different one. And the person I prosecuted with, well, she's now a parish court judge. And this was a case in which the mother had given her daughter to be raised by this lady. The lady was more well off than the mother. And the daughter really didn't have any contact with the mother growing up most of her life. In fact, my memory of the evidence is that she addressed her mother, her biological mother, by her first name and called the woman who raised her mommy. The mother said she wanted the child to get to know her and to stay with her. And the lady, being an agreeable lady, said, all right, the child's mother. The child didn't want to, but he just said, families are not democracies. The child don't have no talk in this thing. And the child went to stay with her mother. Granted, the circumstances with the child were living are not materially commodious as how she lives with her adopted mother. But anyway, while the child was living with her mother, the mother aided and abetted her boyfriend in not only having not only raping the child, I think we indicted for rape, but also committing the grievous sexual assault on the child. You know, he put his tongue in her vagina and he forced her to have oral sex with him and so on. And the child was like about 10. And this is a parish in which we normally cannot get convictions for sexual intercourse. But after they heard it and saw the child and everything, the jury convicted. And so he was convicted of both rape and grievous sexual assault, and the mother was charged for aiding and abetting both, and she was convicted for both. So it does happen. So you say you can be convicted for both rape and grievous sexual assault. And so again, if I go back, the offender is actually a gender-neutral offense. The offense can either be a male or female of age of 12 years and up. And the complainant can be a male or female of any age. And again, as I was saying, the penalties are similar to rape. Life imprisonment with a mandatory minimum period of 15 years, meaning if you are convicted, the shortest sentence a judge can give you is 15 years. Can't go below that. Then I want to emphasize the importance of getting consent and also making sure that the person is of age. I want to highlight a disturbing trend in sexual offending in Jamaica. That is the use of the internet to commit offenses. And I want in particular to highlight two offenses in which we see the use of the internet, which is prevalent in the use of the internet. And because I'm speaking about the internet now, we give another disclaimer I am not a computer person, which you would have noticed at the start of this presentation that I needed help how to share the documents. So any kind of computer, and if we look at the Cybercrimes Act, computer is a very wide definition. Desktop, can be a laptop, can be a hybrid, can be a tablet. Your cell phone is also regarded as a computer. If your PS5 or PlayStation can do any of these things, yes, it will be. If your Fitbit watch can do any of these things, yes, it will be. So these are some examples of computers. I say this again, especially the laypersons amongst. The definition of computer is wide. And since most of you are likely to have a smartphone, I'm letting you know from now that a smartphone is a computer. In terms of grooming, I don't know if many of you are like of the age of Miss Cruikshank when this particular TV show used to be shown on TV called To Catch a Predator. And you know, it was with persons, police officers, pretending to be underage children, usually teenage girls or boys. And they would go into them and to show you how long ago this was, internet chat rooms. So it was before WhatsApp and Snapchat and all of these things. They'll go into these internet chat rooms and they would say to meet up with these persons, the person would chat and the conversation would get very explicit, very randy. Sometimes, you know, the best pornography couldn't write like what some of these people write, what they want to do to these persons, and they would end up meeting. So grooming occurs where adult persons, because at present, and I think Parliament plans to change this, but at present, only an adult can be charged for grooming. Again, only an adult can be charged for grooming. If you're 18 years and over, you're sending these sexually charged texts to somebody who is 15 years and younger, the first element in grooming. And as I was saying, the description I use of To Catch a Predator. So these adults gain the trust and confidence of children, and they befriend them for sexual purposes. So for grooming to take place, there must always be a sexual motive. In our experience as a prosecution, these have been the main ways in which we've seen adult persons try to groom children: through text messages, your ordinary SMS text message, through Facebook. I'm always surprised at the influence Facebook still has out here. I mean, I've understood that in the States and Canada, young people have basically abandoned Facebook, but Facebook still has a hold on young people out here. Probably not as much as it used when it started, but still has a hold there. If only for the fact that very often when we still go out on circuit, we still get the case of the girl under 16 who meets somebody on Facebook, they correspond through Facebook, usually probably through Facebook Messenger, and the person, I think I had one, the person picked up herself. No, the person picked up himself from and found himself in Clarendon. And all of this over a Facebook meeting. It was a case in which I think we charged both the grooming and the buggering. Still the old-time face-to-face ones where people meet, but that's a persons of my generation who are not computer proficient, who still prefer a face-to-face where, you know, if anything come down to it, is your word against my word. Not used as often as it is. Email was being used in the start. the internet in Jamaica, but email too traceable. Snapchat, which I understand that the messages vanish after a certain period of time. Instagram, FaceTime with the video calls, WhatsApp, and you still do have some persons older than me and Miss Cruikshank who still write letter. Still write letter. Methods of grooming. So, who is it committed? I had said the first one before. Only an adult can commit grooming. The second element is that there must be communication. And the important thing to note is, while in most cases in Jamaica, the communication tend to be of a sexual nature, the law says it doesn't have to be of a sexual nature. So you could be talking about who is the latest musician now, Skilly Bang or Skeng or whatever names, whatever Eng name entertainers are going by nowadays. The conversation could only be about that, but communication has taken place. Why? Because it is necessary for the communication to gain the trust. Communication can take place anywhere in the world, so it's a law which has extraterritorial effect. A person can stay in America and communicate with a person in Jamaica. If I follow what appears to be the allegations contained in the Children's Advocate report, this seems to have been one of the ways a person was in California communicating with Jamaican girls in children's homes out here. So it is alleged. And importantly, there must be a meeting. Or there must be some travel to meet. The child may be intercepted on the way to meet the offender. So those are the 4 elements of grooming. As I say again, must be a child. Child is gender neutral. As I say again, there must be a sexual intent behind it. So sometimes, you know, the difficulty with prosecutors is, for example, have you ever watched a movie where it comes to the point and the bad guy decides to tell out his plan and says, yes, haha, this is what I plan to do to you. Or, haha, this is what I was thinking. And yes, the way to cancel the self-destruct button is if you press that button over there, and so on. Well, in real life, criminals don't reveal their motivations. So sometimes what the person may have on them becomes important. So this is why, and I know you did that thing on stop and search, but the police can actually search you incidental to an arrest, things that are on your person. So if you travel to go and meet this child and the police find you with tie straps or handcuffs or condoms or lubricants or these things, well, this is what the prosecution is going to use to prove that, you know, you had some kind of sexual intent, either sadomasochistic with the tie straps and the handcuffs, or it was there to restrain you, and the condoms and the lubricants to ease in the way without any fear of consequences. So that is one. And I bring it up because the internet is so freely available to our young people today. And the internet is not easily supervised, especially by parents and guardians. And I said in a throwaway comment just a couple of minutes ago that families are not democracies. They have to be in charge until you turn an adult. It seems to me, I have, having done this thing now for well over 20 years, it seems to me now that child must have a smartphone, which is password protected. The parents can't get into the phone, you know, and see what is happening, because we have found at the office of the DPP that a lot of these cases, a lot of these sexual offense cases, I don't have to be grooming, have a digital footprint. In fact, we have a joke here that, you know, sometimes you read these cases, the sex under 16 between the boys and the girls, I always say they start off in a textual relationship before it gets sexual. And sometimes when you do read the printouts, boy, I read one when I was in St. Mary and my hair did get grayer than it was when I saw what this 14-year-old girl was writing to a fellow who was about 22. And I am telling you that she gave as good as she was getting. In fact, she was more articulate than the man. In fact, you could see that she was more educated than the man, and she was more articulate and able to express ways in which the man was basically, I don't want to be insulting to him, but he was basic. He was basic, but boy, the girl. I mean, when I read this and I saw the CFCD printout, I remember saying to my colleague, you know, sir, this parish already known for not convicting people, but we're going to enter into evidence, and the jury here said, this is not necessarily the man, but it's the victim talking in this way. And sometimes really a double-edged sword. But I do say that to say that in prosecution and law enforcement, now a lot of these sexual offenses carry a digital footprint. It's there in the statements, the text messages being said, and the police can still get access to the phone. They get the phone and they download the messages, and they are using evidence to show the nature of the relationship. If you are convicted of grooming, it's a maximum period of 15 years. The next one that I want to come to is child pornography. This one is out there. And every now and then when you read the cases, you read them with people videoing the sex acts that they are doing, whether it's oral sex, whether it's sexual intercourse, whether what. People introduce cameras into their relationship. I always tell myself, boy, I'm glad I'm of the generation that cameras never enter into these things. So whatever sins I may have committed when I was much younger, you will have to depend on memory. We have to depend on memory because nothing ever comes off the internet. And especially for young people who are part of the audience who are not law students, you need to know employers are doing Google searches. You apply for a job, they employ people to do an internet search on your background. And if you come on these videos pop up, well, no, so the dream job that you want, we lose. And you also need to know, employers share this information. So it's a plan to go into business for yourself. Need to know. So don't say, boy, I'm living my best life. As people say, you know, a life is meant for living and I'm going to suck the marrow out of life. Sometimes literally. But, you know, if you're a young person, these are some of the dangers you need to be alive to. Your employer might do a search on you. And we have seen cases in which even adults, some of them should have known better. These things happen. So what is child pornography? So again, child pornography has to involve a child. And unlike the other sexual offenses, child pornography goes up to age 17. Goes up to age 17. So child pornography can be visual, so that is photographs, that is videos, that is live stream, that is art, that is cartoons. And the purpose must be, it is showing a child, it must be for a sexual purpose, the visual must be for a sexual purpose. It must show a child. The good thing about child pornography prosecutions is this. The prosecutor doesn't need to prove the age of the child in the representation. Why is that? Because some of these things are not even produced in Jamaica. You pick them up off of the internet. It is enough for the prosecution to say, when you look on the image, that image is supposed to be that of a child or represent a child. So even if you are an adult with perhaps a very young face and a very young body, As long as what you are doing is supposed to represent that of a child, it's child pornography. Don't need to prove age. You even need to prove where it come from. Just what it represents. Child pornography tries to capture a whole lot of different things. So, shows a child engaged in sexual activity. It shows genitals, breasts, pubic areas, or anal region of child. And I have to be careful with this, overseas, because I do know sometimes parents take naked pictures of children. But because those pictures are not for a sexual purpose, you just like your child just jump out of the pool and I run up and down, and you take a video, look, look at Johnny, I run up and down. This is not child pornography because it's not for a sexual purpose. But the other person does it and focuses on these areas, the genitals of the child and so on. For the sexual purpose, that is child pornography. We know there are sick people out there, so sometimes you will see images of children being tortured or physically being abused in a sexual context, being gang raped, being whipped and flogged, you know, spike heels, chains, whips, all these kinds of things. And the child pornography statute is broad enough that it can include audio recordings, so you don't have no picture, you just have a sound, or written material, so literature. And I use it widely to mean written material. So the act tries to capture all the varying aspects, all of the varying conduct. To come back to the cartoons, why? Because there's this big debate. In Jamaica, even if you don't have actual person on it, what you have is a computer-generated image, or you have a cartoon of children engaged in it, you can be charged with child pornography. This is in contrast to the United States of America. So we like to sometimes compare ourselves unfavorably with the US, but in this case, our child pornography law far more protection to our children than in the US, because in the US, and based on a United States Supreme Court decision, I think named Ashcroft against free speech, in which persons had been charged and convicted of child pornography, and the pornography was basically with cartoon characters representing children. So no actual children were used, it was cartoon characters, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States quashed the conviction, saying, no, child pornography has to be actual children. It cannot be cartoon or any other visual representation of children. So this is a major difference between Jamaica and the United States. Jamaica, cartoon children engaging in sexual activity found in your possession, child pornography. US, cartoon children engaged in sexual activity found in your possession, not child pornography. It may be a cybercrimes offense or something, but it is not child pornography. And I say this because we trade videos all the while, especially over social media, especially over WhatsApp. And I'm going to tell you how easy it is. There was a case that I indicted at the office of the DPP. It started as a purse snatching on Orange Street. Guy went there, snatched a woman's purse. Of course, since he didn't have a gun, the good people of Orange Street said they were not tolerating thievery and ganged him, began to beat him. Police at City Center police station went there and rescued him back to the police station. While searching him and getting the phone now, constitutionally, you may say the police had no right to search the phone because the purse was recovered as a purse snatcher. But anyway, police went into his phone. Lo and behold, there was a picture. No, not a picture, a video of two children having sex. So the charge, of course, is no longer the purse snatching, but the child pornography. And his excuse when cautioned Boy, officer, is somebody send it to me. So when you have child pornography, and this is one thing you all need to know. If you get it, delete it immediately. Because once you have it and you know it is on your computer or on your phone, and it is seen, and law enforcement gets a hand on it, you're going to be in issues. Sometimes these things have a way of sticking to your hard drive. It never ever really goes away. But if your phone is examined, it shows that the path it came in on, and it shows that when it was deleted. Because you see, if you have it, you have it say for over a week, over 2 weeks, you have it for a month, and so on. You can't say that I had it within a reasonable period of time. Because more than it, having known what it was, you should have gotten rid of it. You have to be careful with these videos that are being shared. Well, not only videos, pictures, photographs, and so on. You have to be careful with it. And if you know persons who like to send out those things, you tell these persons, do not send these things to me, or you block the person. Because it's very easy to be caught with child pornography. Remember, find possession in the criminal law. Knowledge, you knew it, you knew you had it. It's the same thing as for if you had ganja or a gun. It's the same principle applied to child pornography. Knowledge, custody, and control. Thing is on your phone, and clearly, look at 2 blue ticks are there. It is hard to say you didn't have any knowledge. Worse, it is hard to say now no custody or control. You will have a better defense if you say, I deleted it and didn't know it was still on my hard drive. So I'm telling you, child pornography is there. So I've only decided to use knowingly possessing child pornography, but there are others. For example, big men talk to young girls who want them to video parts of their body or video sexual acts. That is knowingly involving a child in the production of child pornography. You record it, you produce it. If you send it to your friend, you distribute it. So it is very easy. And the internet has made the spreading of child pornography even far. When I was a boy, these were things that you could only see in magazines in which you had to buy in a brown paper bag. But as the age began to get more liberal, you used to have, just some years back, a decade or so back, people used to sell them at traffic lights. The True Confessions magazine, them. Pornography is much more accessible than when I was a boy. You knew which bookstores in the corporate area carried a certain line of books and magazines. You always had persons in your farm room who, like I said, in a brown paper bag, who would have these magazines, and at lunchtime, everybody sit down around it and say, look at that. Things. Like the touch of a button. Most porn sites only ask you, if you know you're under 18, go no further. So careful. And be careful you do it, because these things can be easily downloaded onto your phone. And again, if you are convicted for it, maximum period of 15 years. So I think I have gone over time, so I'm not going to go into the whole thing of the myths about rape and sexual offense. Are there any? All right, so the last thing I want to say, and this is me putting on my prosecutorial hat. There are some things about rape and sexual offenses which are within the popular culture and are there for belief, but they really are not true, but people think they are true. And a lot of it you hear sometimes coming out of the mouth of far-right United States politicians who say these things, and they use weird terms like legitimate rape. You know, for example, if a woman gets pregnant from a rape, that means it wasn't rape. Because if it was rape, she couldn't get pregnant. A kind of nonsense being spewed. So the first thing I want to say is, your average rapist or sexual offender is not a stranger. It's known to you. Very few stranger rape cases in Jamaica. Very, 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 very few. The pattern is that the person knows. So there is that. And to be attached to women. So it's really women who bear the brunt of these sexual myths. The second thing is, the woman is either as pure as the Virgin Mary or as salacious as Jezebel. So if she wears something sexy, she's asking for it. She's communicating that she wants to have sex. The other thing is, we tend to judge a person by their character. So things that are irrelevant to the commission of the offense, in which a lot of defense counsel try to introduce aspects of the character of the complainant into evidence. Even though there's Section 27 of the Sexual Offences Act, which really prescribes it unless you can show good cause. And they do that because they know there is a tendency, especially for women, to judge other women harshly. Let me tell you, for example, if you work in the office of the DPP and you're going to empanel a jury in a sexual offense case, you may hear prosecutors say something like this: "We don't want no panel full of women, because chances are that we acquit the man." Christian woman, if you see them with their hair and look like the hair don't cream or so on, you're not empaneling them. Why? Because those kind of women sit down in judgment on other women and likely to acquit the man. Thirdly, a genuine Rasta man is somebody you want on a jury. Why? Because Rasta men are protective over their women and their female children. You don't know your it's either. So, and I say all of this because when it comes to character, because you see, if a woman can chop wood in the same way and plow bush, she's going to have a problem establishing that she's a credible, truthful, and reliable witness. So it don't matter what happened on the day. All these things with her backstory are going to come in, even if she was in a relationship with a man before. So that is one myth. The other one is that women are supposed to be emotional. If the woman does not put up a fight, she's being raped, means it's not rape, she actually consented. And why is that iniquitous? Because rape is really a crime against consent, you know? It's a crime against the will. If you remember what I said before about where consent is presumed not to exist, a lot of it is only one part mentioned, physical assault, you know? Every other part, if you can terrorize the person into submitting, and what you have actually is submission, not consent. While every consent involves a submission, not every submission involves a consent. So if you can terrorize a person, I think I use the example, you take your gun out and you just put it on the desk, or you put it in your lap, or you're driving in the car with the man, and take out his gun and put it in his lap, and then the other hand stretch over and start massage your parts there without your consent. What you do? Because you fight and shout and say police, or as you see in movie, open car and drop and roll, out of a moving vehicle. In Jamaican traffic, I wouldn't recommend it. This rape don't take. So this is one of the myths which are at the heart of us not being able to get convictions. The other one, the woman is spiteful. There must be something with the man. Why is she saying rape? Probably have another woman. You're born, so she says rape him. Or the usual one, especially when you're dealing with young females. I promise her a cell phone. Should I get it? Always amazed the prevalence of this defense and didn't know that you could actually get sex with young girls either for the price of a big deal at Kentucky at peace, or the promise of a cell phone. And always that is one of the major defenses always put up. Reporting of the rape, if she don't make a hue and cry, if she don't report it immediately, it means that rape didn't take place. It's another myth. People don't come to terms with the trauma that the person may have felt. The feelings of shame, inadequacy, sometimes unfairly saying that it is their fault, it is them put themselves in the situation why they get raped. Your average rape in Jamaica is not reported on the day it happened. Or sometime after. And in many cases is when it is discovered that it is reported. And people have not come to terms with the psychology of the rape victim in Jamaica. Why rapes are not immediately reported. Sometimes when you report the rapes, the police are insensitive. I remember when I was a clerk in St. Catherine, woman just raped, went to the Spanish Town police station to report the rape. And the officer in the guard room told her, boy, you know, Sissoko, no, it wasn't Sissoko, just to show you how old I am, it was rape unit. I'll tell you what happened. Go home and don't bathe. Any officer could have taken up the case, you know, and carried her to Spanish Town Hospital, which is right beside the police station practically. But that is what the officer told her. Go home and don't bathe. That happens. It's not easy reporting these sexual offenses. Sometimes there's a female under surveillance. Is it that, you know, some man is watching her and because she get caught while she cry out rape? The other one, come to it because I'm wrapping up. The other one is that she must suffer injury. If she is raped, there must be some batter bruising on her. And again, I come back to the thing. Rape is a crime against the will. Overwhelming of consent, you know. And a consent can be overcome without even having to lay a hand on the person. Again, a colleague of mine prosecuted a rape case in the Home Circuit Court. And the four person, maybe gender neutral, actually was a manager of a bank. Came back not guilty, and my colleague asked, so why won't you find the person not guilty? Why? She never have no injury. Sensible woman with a degree, you know. She never have no injury. So that is one of the myths which continue to be prevalent. And ladies and gentlemen, I have reached the end of my presentation on sexual offenses. So I don't know, they're willing to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you, Counsel, for that fulsome presentation. I feel as if I have completed course 101 in sexual offenses, and I'm sure the students have benefited tremendously from it. I do see a few questions. The first question is, could it be that the person in those rural parishes are not educated enough on sexual offenses to appreciate that they are committing these offenses?
All right, well, this is a discussion that we have in the office all the time. And my humble opinion is this: it doesn't matter the education level, because we see the same thing happening across the class strata of Jamaica. The last example I just used with the bank manager who was the foreperson of the jury. You know, it seems to me that there are widely held sexual attitudes and myths which have become cultural, and they're hard to dispel. It doesn't matter the education level. People who are educated have the same kind of prejudices.
Thank you for that. The second question is, will the person still be charged with incest if they find out after the fact that they were blood relatives?
Well, incest is predicated on the fact that you have the relationship of blood in it. So yes, if you find out after and you continue to have sex, well, yes, you can be charged for incest. It probably is a more credible defense to say you did not know until the DNA evidence came out and showed that you are now blood relatives. But if you have now discovered and then you still continue, yes, you will be charged for incest. It's probably hard to prosecute you for the times when you did not know. Hope I have answered.
If it is that they stop after knowing, then it is less likely to be prosecuted.
It's because part of these things with the crimes that we're dealing with involve mens rea. And if you look at how the statute is worded, it says knowingly. So the prosecution has established as an element of the offense that the person knew the level of the relationships. That's why I'm saying, if after the discovery, it continues, yes. If before the discovery, you never know, it's hardly likely that we're going to bring the prosecution.
Okay, thank you again. Another question, or is this a statement? I agree 100%. Parents and guardians should have access to their children's phone or devices, or search the phone devices occasionally. We're still inviting questions. If you have any, you can always post your questions in the chat and I will ask our esteemed guest.
I'm grateful for the rumor that I'm esteemed.
Well, you have certainly earned it, King's Counsel. As it relates, though, I have noticed that in your presentation, I've picked up your, well, it's not a recommendation, but your suggestions for certain, several amendments to the legislation. And I gather from that, areas that concern incest, age of consent, marital rape, and buggery would certainly seem to be areas that you find there's some need for amendments. Would you like to comment any further on that?
So, yes, and I remember I always prefaced it by saying this was my opinion and not the opinion of the DPP or Ms. Llewellyn. So you may be aware that some years back, I don't know if it was in 2018 or 2017, a joint select committee of Parliament sat down to review the Sexual Offences Act and the Domestic Violence Act. And out of that review came a report. I don't know if the report is on the parliamentary website, but I know we got a copy. And it seems to me that Parliament actually is looking also at reviewing some of these aspects of sexual offense. So I can say the Joint Select Committee report has actually recommended the abolition of marital rape. It has recommended only one type of rape, and that is a man forcing himself on a woman without her consent and so on. I'm trying to remember if they also recommended widening the scope of incest to include adopted children and foster children. Where they parted company was in relation to buggery. And the Parliament felt that this is perhaps something that they may have to go to the nation with, which is why, again, I say you may need to have a referendum. It could be that it is a politically sticky subject, which the parliamentarians don't want to legislate by using their own authority, and so they have to go to it. But let me say, I hear that the Minister of Legal Affairs is putting together a constitutional commission. So these are probably areas that will come. But yes, I do believe that the Sexual Offences Act is in need of review and amending. For example, there's one which I didn't mention here today. The knowing transmission of disease by sexually transmitted diseases. This is where persons know that they have the disease and they continue to have unprotected sex with their partners. I think that should be an offense. It's actually an offense in other countries. Well, let me not say it's not an offense out here, because if I have, and let me use a disease which is not as sexy as HIV/AIDS. Let me see if I have syphilis or herpes. Well, herpes was a big disease before HIV/AIDS. If I have herpes and I know that I have herpes, and I go and I have unprotected sex with a partner, I can, or I think the law, but I think it needs to be expressed, can actually charge me under Section 22 of the Offences Against the Persons Act for inflicting grievous bodily harm. And I think if I know I have herpes and I have sex with my partner, and I did so with the intent to pass on the disease, well, then I can be charged under Section 20 of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. But that's it. These are laws, and my way of reading statutes is that I mustn't have to infer or ask a court to interpret. I like statutes that say things expressly and say what they mean. And I think that this is an area which I think we need to look at. That is just one area.
Yes, I agree with all that is evolving. We do have a next question. Can two 15-year-olds be charged for having sex with each other?
Yeah. And I have seen it in the St. Mary Circuit. I have seen it in the St. Mary Circuit, where both of them give statements against each other. And the two of them, although schools don't like it, and the court said, most of this, two of them stand up there in their school uniform in the prisoner's dock. However, the policy now is that when you have these children having sex with each other, really don't want them in a criminal court. And so you have child diversion. You have the Child Diversion Act. So technically, I mean, they really ought not to reach the criminal court. The family court or the children's court ought to weed them out to child diversion so they don't face the criminal court and they come with the stigma and the shame of having to be there. And people have a police officer, they call out your name. Jeremy Taylor, you come in with your mother, you stand up, your mother stand one side and you have to go into the prisoner's dock, and if the dock full, you're sitting down beside a person who commit a murder, you commit a gun crime, and that kind of thing. So the law has moved so as not to criminalize children. And in other countries, for example, I know in the Republic of South Africa and the Teddy Bear Clinic case has actually said, well, you know, it's unconstitutional to have these children charged with these offenses and being subject to criminal penalties. So the South African Constitutional Court struck down those provisions as unconstitutional. Jamaica hasn't gone that route, but Jamaica has gone child diversion so that they don't get them into the criminal legal machinery. So yes, briefly, two 15-year-olds can be charged, but the law is moving beyond having two 15-year-olds being criminally charged for these offenses.
Okay, thank you. Let me just check to see. I'm not seeing any more questions. I have lots of comments that it was informative. I believe at this time we can ask our second-year student, Mr. DeAndre Buchanan, to give the vote of thanks?
Good evening again, Ms. Levy, King's Counsel. Firstly, I would like to thank Ms. Levy and other members of the Legal Aid Clinic for allowing me to speak on this auspicious occasion, to extend utmost gratitude to King's Counsel for taking time out to discuss such a hyper-acute topic in the pellucid manner in which he did, as I personally believe the information we have both learned and relearned today will assist my colleagues and myself in practice, as well as provide further clarification in relation to the laws surrounding this topic to members of the public. We thank you again, King's Counsel.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Again, King's Counsel, we appreciate and we thank you that you took the time off from your vacation to be with us this evening. And we really appreciate it. This concludes our live stream events for Wednesday, January 11. Join us tomorrow, Thursday, January 12 at 9 a.m. for day 4. Day 4 involves the culmination of our events. It is live, meaning that persons may come in face to face, visit us at 18 Gibraltar Hall Road for several presentations, as well as members or different agencies coming to provide additional advice and information. You may also visit our website at nmls.edujm or email us at nmls.lac@umona.edujm. Or you may contact us on WhatsApp at 876-561-9803. We thank you for joining us, and we continue to say keep safe and wish you all the best for the rest of this year. Thank you.